I'm Jesse Thorn. Ronnie Spector loved Christmas as a little girl, but she wasn't going on sleigh rides through the snow. She was a city kid, and she had a question that pretty much every Christmas celebrating city kid has.
So I asked my father, I said, we don't have a chimney. Where's Santa? How is he going to get here? I was so upset and frustrated. And he said, Ronnie, Santa is coming down the fire escape. I was so happy, Jesse. I ran to my room. I put the covers over my head, and I fell fast asleep.
From MaximumFun.org and NPR, it's Bullseye. This week, Ronnie Spector, Jane Lynch, and singer-songwriter Cy Smith. It's a cavalcade of holiday musical talent. That's all coming up on the Bullseye Holiday Spectacular. It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. First up on this year's Bullseye Holiday Spectacular, the legendary Ronnie Spector. Ronnie and her girl group, the Ronnets, were the centerpiece of the Phil Spector wall of sound of the 1960s. Their huge hit, Be My Baby, still gets airplay on oldies stations. Ronnie was a teenager when she started recording, and the only thing bigger than her ambition was her hair. The Ronnets recorded some of the most iconic Christmas music ever made in 1963. The album was A Christmas Gift to You from Phil Spector.
Just see those sleigh bells jingling, ring, tingle, tingling too. Come on, it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride together with you.
It's been a few decades, but Ronnie's love for Christmas hasn't faded one bit. When I spoke to her in 2010, she'd just recorded a new album of Christmas songs. That album is called Ronnie Spector's Best Christmas Ever. Ronnie Spector, welcome to Bullseye.
Hi, Jesse. It's great being here. And I love Christmas.
What were the things that you did special at Christmas growing up in Manhattan?
Oh, gosh. Well, first of all, I always went to Radio City to watch the ice skating rink. And my father would always take me and my sister to see them put up the tree when they lit it, at Radio City.
Sure.
So we did so many things like that. And just getting Christmas ready at the house. I remember my father, because we lived in an apartment, and he used to take the tree and drag it down the hall. That's when I knew it was really Christmas.
Now, you just had one sister in the house who later joined you in the Ronnets. But
yes.
I know you had a very large extended family, like dozens of cousins.
Yeah. 23 first cousins. It was amazing. Well, you know why, Jesse? My mom had 6 sisters and 7 brothers.
Wow.
So that's why I had so many first cousins and stuff. And they were my first audience. My 7 uncles and my 6 aunts. These were my audience, and they applauded me every Sunday at my grandmother's house. And that's when I said, I can do this. And I'm only 7 years old.
Was singing part of your Christmases as a kid?
Of course. That was how it all started. I was 6 years old, and I remember my mother my mother was a waitress, and she stood up on her feet all day, and I just had to go sit on Santa's lap. So my mother took me to Macy's, and I felt so bad as I grew older to remember, wow, my mother stood up on her feet all day as a waitress, and then she took me to see Santa Claus at Macy's, and we had to stand on line for 2 hours. And I said, Mom, I can't go. And she would say, honey, I'm so tired. I said, but Mom, if I don't sit on Santa's lap, I'm going to be crazy this Christmas. She said, okay, Ronnie, okay. Or Veronica is what they called me back then. And I sat on Santa's lap, and that was when I fell in love with Christmas, with Santa, with Frosty, with the tree, everything. I mean, that's when it started, sitting on Santa's lap at Macy's.
Why don't we hear a little bit of your classic Christmas recording of Frosty the Snowman, Ronnie Spector and the Ronnets?
Yes.
Frosty the Snowman was a happy, jolly soul with a corn cob pipe and a button nose and 2 eyes made out of coal. Frosty the Snowman is a fairy tale, they say. He was made of snow, but the children know how he came to life
So, how old were you when you first went up on stage at Amateur Night at the Apollo?
Oh, I was like 11. 12, something like way in that age.
Tell me about that first time that you performed at the Apollo. Do you remember it?
Oh, God, like it was yesterday. It was my first show ever, professional show. And I remember it was Nedra, myself, Estelle, and another cousin, and my cousin Ira, which is a boy cousin, because back then they had Frankie Lyman, the students, Frankie Valli, all these guy singers. So I said to my cousin Ira, I said, maybe you should sing lead. So we go out there to Amateur Night. I'll never, ever forget. My cousin Ira has the microphone in his hand, and nothing comes out. I was petrified. So I grabbed the mic from him and I started singing, "Why Do Birds Sing?" The Frankie Lyman song. So I started, and the audience went nuts for me. So for me, it was like I was passing because they didn't know what we were, but they loved me. And I said, oh my God, if I can pass at the Apollo, they'll love me all over the world. And I was very young, to have all these kind of feelings about touring all over the world. And my mother would always say, don't get too excited. This is show business we're talking about. You don't know if you're going to make a hit record. You don't know anything. But I did know I loved the stage, and I got it from a very early age.
You and your sister and cousin had this outrageous look in that beginning of your career. I wonder how long it took for you to, and what you had to do to get your hair as high as it was when you were on stage. I was watching some film clips, and I was very impressed at the sheer height of what was on top of your head.
Well, I'll tell you what we had to do. First of all, you had to tease it a lot and use a lot of Aquanet hairspray. That's what we used in the 60s, Aquanet. Then you wind it around your hair. Then you twist it again, and then you tease it again. We had a lot of hair. I guess it was for, because of our background and stuff. That's what I said about me and Keith Richards. If we had married and had kids, our kids would have great hair. I always say that to Keith.
I'm Jesse Thorn. This is Bullseye. I'm talking with singer Ronnie Spector. When we spoke in 2010, she had just released an album called Ronnie Spector's Best Christmas Ever.
Merry, 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 merry Christmas time. I hope you've been thinking of me. I'm right where I want to be. What you say? Hey. Merry, 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 merry Christmas time. Throw another log on the fire. Satisfy your heart's desire. Take it high, high, high. Bells ring out, let's spend this time together. Underneath the mistletoe.
So the height of your career was this really transitional time in popular music. It was this time when doo-wop and that kind of thing was on the way out, and
Yes.
Really harder rock and roll was on the way in. And you and your contemporaries were sort of bridging that gap between those two things.
Right.
And one of the ways that you bridged that gap was by having these like actual personal relationships with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones.
Yes, we did.
Tell me about how you first met the Beatles.
Okay. Well, first of all, the Beatles hadn't come to America yet, so they weren't even known in America. And when we were over in England, we were like on front pages of every paper there. So the Beatles wanted to see, Decca Records gave us a party, because that's what was our label over there. So Decca Records gave us a party, and guess who showed up? The Beatles. And John Lennon was cockeye over me, and he took me in this back room at Decca Records, and I almost had to use a whip to get that guy out of the room. But, I met all of them. I love them all. I love the Rolling Stones were my opening act in England, so I knew them real good. We used to travel on the tour bus together, and Keith and I would go, and when it got too foggy and stuff in London, we would pull over, the bus would pull over, and Keith and I would get out and knock on doors, and they were so nice. They would open the door, and I would say, "Hi, I'm Ronnie of the Ronnets," and Keith would say, "I'm Keith of the Rolling Stones." They let us in, they give us stones and tea and everything, and we take it out to the bus and give Mick some and the other guys, Brian. I mean, everything. I knew those guys better than I knew the American groups.
Were your folks still on board for the whole rock and roll star thing when they saw that
yes.
slit in the side of your skirt?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, my mother toured with us everywhere we went, even the Apollo Theater overseas in England. She was with us every step of the way. Because she told me once, she said, if you sit on a guy's lap and you feel something hard, get up and run. So I did. I was sitting on John Lennon's lap at the plaza, and I felt something getting hard. And I got up and ran. And that's a true story. And he called me the next day. He was so embarrassed by it. He said, "We want to get out of here. We're like prisoners in this plaza. You got to get us out of here, Ronnie." I said, "I can take you up to Harlem to get some ribs and chicken." They said, "We'd love it." So I got them out of there, took them up to Harlem. We had a blast. Nobody recognized them. And it was great. They loved it because nobody recognized them.
When did you become aware of what a sort of holiday icon that that Phil Spector Christmas record made you and your contemporaries? When did you start to feel that these songs were going to be more than just what a Christmas record usually is, which is, just a way to sell a couple 100,000 records for a hit band. You know what I mean?
Well, I tell you one thing. Phil Spector was Jewish. He didn't know anything about Christmas. So he'd come to my house and ask me what. That's why I sang "I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus." He'd say, "What did your mother and father do when you were a little girl?" And so all my songs, and Frosty the Snowman and Sleigh Ride. I loved sleighing. So everything that's on that album of my stuff was actually done from my own words to Phil, and that's how he didn't even think about Christmas because, like I said, he was Jewish. So I got him really into Christmas. That's how he made that. It's a Christmas gift for you.
Let's hear Ronnie Spector and the Ronnets singing "I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus."
Okay. Mwah.
I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus underneath the mistletoe last night. She didn't see me creep down the stairs to have a peek. She thought that I was tucked up in my bedroom fast asleep. Then I saw Mommy tickle Santa Claus underneath.
My wife has, like you, dozens of cousins. And they have this Christmas Eve party every year at her grandparents' house.
Yes.
With literally like 40 direct relations all celebrating Christmas together. And I wonder if you had any Christmas traditions like that with your huge extended family.
Oh, of course. I mean, I remember my grandmother and all her kids, which were my aunts and uncles. They lived on 140th Street in New York, and I lived 151st Street in New York. So every Christmas we used to go to my grandmother's house, and all my aunts, I remember one aunt loved cigarettes, so I'd buy her cigarettes. Of course, my mother would buy them. I was only like 7 or 8. My mother would buy the cigarettes and put them in a Christmas pack, because they were square, so it was easy to wrap. And another aunt loved Sherman's Barbecue on 151st Street, so I did the same thing. They'd wrap it up in tinfoil, and then I'd put Christmas wrappings on it. I did things like that for all my aunts and uncles and cousins, and I was the star of the whole family.
I like the idea of the traditional Christmas gifts being a pack of cigarettes for
Right.
one aunt and some
Sherman's
barbecue.
Isn't that something? But they wrapped it good and stuff, so it wasn't like when I say barbecue to other people, they say, "What? What kind of present is that?" I said, "Well, that's what they wanted." And we didn't grow up in a very, rich family or even middle class. We lived in Spanish Harlem, so all those things were very necessary, and my aunts and uncles loved everything I did.
We'll finish up with Ronnie Spector in just a minute. When we return from the break, I'll talk with her about what it was like working with Joey Ramone, one of her biggest fans. It's Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR. This message comes from NPR sponsor Odoo. Is your old software making it impossible to keep up with demand? Then it's time to switch to Odoo. Odoo is a suite of business applications designed to streamline, automate, and simplify any company. Odoo has apps for everything: CRM, inventory, manufacturing, sales, accounting, you name it, Odoo's got you covered. So, stop wasting time and start getting stuff done with Odoo. For a free trial, go to odoo.com/bullseye. Welcome back to the Bullseye Holiday Spectacular. I'm Jesse Thorn. If you're just joining us, my guest is Ronnie Spector. She fronted the Ronnets, one of the biggest girl groups in history. She's also a lover of Christmas music. When we talked in 2010, she'd just released an album, Ronnie Spector's Best Christmas Ever. Before we get back into our conversation, let's hear Ronnie's latest Christmas song, a collaboration with Elle King called Under the Mistletoe.
Everyone is gathered, celebrating Christmas cheer. We're so glad to be together, but I wanna get out of here. So when the party's over, everyone has to go, so we can be alone under the mistletoe.
I went really deep into your catalog when I was preparing for this interview.
Yes.
And I really loved listening to a couple of songs that you recorded in the 70s. One of them was this song called "Try Some Buy Some" that you recorded for Apple Records.
Yes, with George Harrison.
Tell me how you ended up not just being pals with the Beatles, but recording with them.
Well, it was very simple. They said, we want Ronnie Spector's voice on Apple Records. And my ex-husband took me over to England. We got over there, and I get into the studio. There's one person in there, and his hair was long, so I couldn't really see who it was. And I got up, and he was sitting at the piano, and he looked up, and it was George Harrison. And we hugged and kissed. Well, not that kind of kissing, but, hugged and kissed and everything. And it was so great. And he wrote "Try Some, Buy Some" for me right there on the spot. And we did that song, and then I went back to California to be with my adopted children.
Let's hear "Try Some Buy Some" from the early 1970s, a
Yeah, I
song
loved it.
written by George Harrison, performed by Ronnie Spector.
Way back in time, someone said try some. I tried some, now buy some. I bought some. Whoa, whoa, whoa. After a while, when I had tried them, denied them, I opened my eyes and I saw you. Not a thing that I had. Not a thing that I
You also recorded in the 1990s with Joey Ramone of the Ramones.
Oh, yes. Love Joey.
How did you first meet him?
Well, I had met Joey like a few years before we recorded and stuff. We'd always meet at this place called the Continental down on 8th Street. And then we got to talking one night. So he said, Ronnie, I would love to record. You're my favorite female singer. So he said, we got to make a record together. And at the time, I didn't know Joey was sick. I didn't have any clue. And then we would go over to Daniel Ray's house, his best friend, which lived a block from him. And that's when he would bring his lunch. We did like 4 EP and everything. And I had no idea. We did this one song called Memory, and it was like telling me he will only be a memory in the near future. And I had no idea that he was dying and stuff. And it devastated me when I couldn't go and see him in the hospital that very last time. He said, I don't want Ronnie to see me like this. So I didn't see him the very last time, and it broke my heart. He was the nicest guy, and he was so, genuine, you know. He loved rock and roll.
Woke up thinking about you today. Why does it have to be this way? We drove each other crazy. Bye bye, babe, bye bye, baby.
Well, I guess it's over and it's done. We had some good times, we had fun. We drove each other crazy. I'll always love you. Bye bye, baby. Babe, bye bye. Bye bye, baby. Don't you cry. Bye bye, baby.
Had you heard his records when you first met him?
Oh, yes, of course.
What did you think of them? I mean, it's something that they're so deeply rooted in the music that you made, but they're also so completely different.
Well, that's what I liked about them. The fact that they were like me and they liked my music, but they were different from me. That's just like the Beatles and the Stones. We were all so different. It's a little Ronnie sitting in the middle of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And then I come to New York and I've got Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, and Joey Ramone and the Ramones. So I've been surrounded by people that love my voice, thank God.
What do you enjoy most about being a music performer?
I love being in the recording studio because it brings me to the stage with new material. And of course I sing all my old songs, but it's nothing like doing something new and fresh and, you know, like the new CD. It has all my songs on the originals. And, you know, Sleigh Ride and Frosty, all those records were like Irving Berlin and stuff. But my stuff that I did now is like stuff that is original, and I love that.
Merry voices raised in singing, carols through the streets are ringing. Oh, because it's Christmas once again.
Ronnie Spector from 2010, just after the release of her album, Ronnie Spector's Best Christmas Ever. What a legend.
Was hung there slyly. Oh, because it's Christmas once again. Little kitty's nose is flattened on the window pane, peeking at the dollies and the shiny choo-choo trains. Santa's hitching up his reindeer, got his bag packed tight. Everything is ready for the sleigh ride through the night. Christmas trees with lights are twinkling, glasses filled with snowflakes sprinkling. Oh, because it's Christmas once again.
Even more of the Bullseye Holiday Special still to come. We've got Cy Smith and Jane Lynch on the docket. It's Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR. Support for this podcast and the following message come from Airbnb. If you've ever thought about hosting, you might have a few questions. What's it like? Where do I store my stuff? Is hosting worth it? Now, with Ask a Superhost, you can get free one-on-one help from Airbnb's most experienced hosts. Whether you're curious how to get started or just wondering if it's right for you, you can now ask someone who's already hosting. Learn more at airbnb.com/askasuperhost.
Hey there, beautiful people. I'm Travell Anderson.
And I'm Jared Hill. We are the hosts of Fanti, the show where we have complex and complicado conversations about the gray areas in our lives, the things that we really, really love sometimes, but also have some problematic feelings about.
Yes, we get into it all. You want to know our thoughts about Nicki Minaj and all her foolishness? We got you. You want to know our thoughts about gentrification and perhaps some positive aspects of gentrification? We get into that too. Every single Thursday, you can check us out at MaximumFun.org. Listen, you know you want it, honey, so come on and get it. Period.
It's the Bullseye Holiday Spectacular. I'm Jesse Thorn. Time now for a special holiday edition of our segment, The Song That Changed My Life. It's a chance for musicians, artists, and other creators to tell us about the music that made them who they are. Next up is Cy Smith.
Yeah. Your love takes me higher. I don't wanna zoom out. I wanna keep it in perspective. Your love feels like fire. I don't wanna burn out. I'll keep it cold.
Cy Smith is a singer, songwriter, and producer who lives out here in Los Angeles. She's been recording soul records for over a decade, and she's collaborated with folks like Kamasi Washington and Thundercat. She's also an incredibly talented backup singer. Name a great, and she's sung with them, from Sheila E. to Shaka Khan, Usher, and Whitney Houston. When Cy Smith and I talked in 2019, she just dropped a fun seasonal EP called Christmas in Cyberspace.
Christmas time is here. Happiness and cheer. Fun for all that children call their favorite time of year. Snowflakes in the air. Carols everywhere. Olden times and ancient rhymes of love and dreams to share. Sleigh bells in the air.
That's cyberspace with an S, by the way, as in Cy Smith. When she and I talked about this album and about whether any of the songs on it had a good story, she brought up My Favorite Things. And boy, did she not let us down. So let's not waste any more time before we get into it. Here's Cy Smith.
The first time I heard My Favorite Things was in the movie The Sound of Music, of course.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things.
I think the first time I saw The Sound of Music, I was about 6 or 7 years old. I was in my mother's bedroom watching it on TV in our apartment in Hillcrest Heights, Maryland.
Cream-colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things.
You know, that melody caught my ear because it was such a distinct melody. As a child, that melody just sounded like a dance to me. It just sounded like la da 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 da. It just sounded like a dance. If a dance could sing, that's what it would sound like.
These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
Even on paper, when you look at it, it looks like a dance, you know? And the things that she was singing about were quite abstract to me, you know, cream-colored ponies and, you know, like, I didn't know anything that she was talking about. I didn't know what a schnitzel was, but that melody made me want to know, you know?
Then I don't feel so bad.
So the next time that I heard My Favorite Things, and it really sort of changed my life, was when I might have been about 8 or 9. I had an aunt, my Aunt Bobby in Teaneck, New Jersey. She had a little radio in the kitchen, and the Coltrane version came on the radio. I didn't recognize it as my favorite things, but she began singing it on top of the Coltrane version. And that's when it sort of resonated with me. That's when I went, wait, that's that song from the movie. I hadn't seen the movie repeatedly, so I didn't walk around singing the soundtrack of, The Sound of Music. But when she sang it, it just reminded me of that song, and all of a sudden, I don't know, like it made sense to me. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, all of those sort of abstract concepts made sense. Like, oh wow, I can just think of something that I really like, and anything that's frightening me will go away. I wasn't listening to jazz at all when I was a kid. And that was the thing. When she started singing this on top of this, it made all of a sudden jazz accessible to me. I think at that point, jazz was just sort of, music that older people listened to. It wasn't something that I would go and put on the record player, But when she started singing it, I was like, oh, jazz is something that you can sing along to. Jazz is something that, you can sort of interpret songs that you already know. Jazz can be a template. That was sort of a new understanding for me. Like it was a discovery. Everything about that song made me curious. The melody made me curious. When I started listening to really what those words were, that made me want to sort of embrace my own writing a little more. And so often I would replace those lyrics with my own. Long before I did this, my current project, I would always just sort of make up my own lyrics in that same pattern because I thought it would be cool to sing something that really resonated with me. Things that really were my favorite things, Jumping on something, swinging on playgrounds, da 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 da, hanging around. Like it was probably really silly like that. There was always something like that. Things that I really like to do.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens.
So yeah, when I decided to do a Christmas project, I knew I wanted to record my favorite things. That had been on my mind for 20 years.
These are a few of my favorite things.
To finally sit down and record this song, it was the easiest thing to me because I felt like I've been thinking about this for so long. So it didn't take me long to sort of, even rewriting the lyrics, that was like, I did it in the car on the way to the studio.
Shoes with fat laces and oversized glasses, watching my people rise up from the ashes, sharing a smile with that guy on the train.
And I didn't have to think too hard because I think those items had been sort of running around my head on and off for the last 20 years.
Sun shining down on my sisters and brothers, ladies and
whenever I sing this melody, I just immediately am transported back to my childhood. That just because the melody, Rodgers and Hammerstein, they just created something so beautiful with that lilting melody. It just lilts like I don't know what lilts in nature. You know, it just it sounds like a stick figure just sort of becoming curvy all of a sudden. You know what I mean? It just sounds like air all of a sudden becoming a form. You know, it sounds like magic. And so when you sit at the piano and sing this, it's just liberating. It's just a lot of fun. I can't describe it any other way.
Knowing you can't keep a good woman down. These are a few of my favorite things. Catching a breeze on that old porch swing. These are a few of my favorite things. Double Dutch jumping like we're still 15. These are a few of my favorite things. Hearing my music blasted from your cars. These are a few of my favorite things. Don't you front on me, you know I got bars. These are a few of my favorite things.
Cy Smith on the song that changed her life, My Favorite Things. Cy's Christmas record is called Christmas in Cyberspace. You can buy it or stream it now. If you live in New York, you can see Cy Smith live. She's performing at the Blue Note with the trumpeter Chris Bodie, now through December 19th, and again, December 30th and 31st. It's the Bullseye Holiday Spectacular. I'm Jesse Thorn. When you watch Jane Lynch, you know you're in for something funny. She's great in every single Christopher Guest movie, of course, hilarious in The 40-Year-Old Virgin. She was the breakout star of Glee. More recently, her cameo on Only Murders in the Building was brilliant. But you might not know that she can sing, too. For years now, Jane has sung original swing tunes and standards all over the country with a full band and everything. When I talked with Jane Lynch in 2016, she and her band had just recorded their first Christmas record. It's called A Swingin Little Christmas. Here's the title track.
We're having a swinging little party with all of our friends. We're hoping you dig the invitation, make a plan to attend. We're gonna be singing jingle bells until the holidays end. A swinging little Christmas time. We're gonna be wrapping up your present with a big shiny bow. You won't want to miss a single minute, don't be late for the show. There's gonna be gingerbread and tarties and the band's gonna blow. A swinging little Christmas time. So get your scalp.
Jane Lynch, welcome to the Bullseye Holiday Special. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's so great to see you too. Thanks.
You're really singing your butt off on this
Yeah,
record.
and as I'm listening to it, going, where did we breathe? Because we're performing that live now, going like this.
I like that you took your celebrity from Glee.
Yeah.
And I think the last time we spoke, the celebrity from Glee was just blossoming.
Yes, indeed, it just pierced through the ground.
You had just gone from like 20 years as a working actor to
Angry.
famous person completely by surprise.
Bitter. Yes, exactly.
And I'm glad that you took your fame and financial security and decided to launch a cabaret act.
Yeah, there you go.
It's clear that the whole time you were just like, if I can just get on stage and sing.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason for the whole trajectory. Now I will do a cabaret show.
Was it precipitated by all the volume of singing that was going on Glee, or from being on Broadway? That was like one of the first things you did.
It's probably the Broadway thing. I mean, and the Glee thing too probably started it. But I've always loved singing. I've done been in sketch comedy shows since my late 20s, and we always do a silly little musical number. And we were usually quite musically good, but it was funny. And then of course Annie as well, doing Annie on Broadway.
I don't always enjoy watching musical theater, particularly. I have to admit.
One of those. Okay.
I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I
Good.
just don't. It has to really work for it to work for me as an audience member.
I get you. Yeah.
But if you said to me right now, here's a part in a musical, I'd be like, yeah,
All over it.
I can't sing, I can't dance, but it is fun.
It's so much fun. Doing Annie was like I got bitten by the theater bug again. I hadn't been on stage in a very, very long time. And I was up there with all these people, and we all loved each other, and we all had little, inside jokes, and we'd look at each other and ha ha ha, and we all hated the children. And it was really fun. We didn't hate the children; they were great kids. That's kind of led directly to 54 Below, which is a cabaret space in New York, asking me if I wanted 4 nights to do my act, which I didn't have. Most Broadway people have an act. So I grabbed Kate Flannery, who was Meredith the Drunk in The Office, and said, let's do a show. And it led to this thing, that record you just played.
Kate Flannery does have an act. Kate Flannery is a great singer, sings with a comedy
Amazing
group
singer.
called the Lampshades.
Mm-hmm.
When you agreed to have a cabaret act, was it a daunting prospect?
Yeah, it was like, what am I doing? I don't know how to do this. And I knew, but it was something I wanted to do. There was something stronger inside of me screaming yes than the pretty loud voice saying no. So I said yes, and of course I called Kate right away. We've been singing on and off together for a long time, and so we knew, she's a legit singer. She's a legit.
Yeah,
she's
she
a
can really blow,
throwback.
yeah.
Yeah, and she's a throwback. She can sing like the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, which this Christmas album is basically a retro album of that period, and it's one of my favorite too. So I brought Kate along, and then I hear people like cracking up as I'm singing this song, and I look back, and she is the shenanigans, and so thus was born kind of a heighten and explore of what was already our dynamic, which is kind of an Eve Arden, Kay Ballard kind of thing, where Eve Arden is the tall, like, disapproving one, and Kay Ballard's the loud, wacky Italian, even though Kate is Irish.
I mean, one of the things about singing on stage and singing in general is that it requires shamelessness in a way that even comedy doesn't necessarily. Like, you have to...
Yes, I see what you mean.
You
It's very
can't
raw.
sing on stage without putting all of yourself into it. There's no holding back
And
when
if
you're
you
singing.
are, they can tell.
Yeah.
Anybody can tell. You can feel it. I remember that I saw a picture of myself, and I was holding the mic, and my eyes were closed, and my head was back, and I was like, wow, you really think you're a singer. It's really exposing. It's almost like dancing in a way, too. It's almost like you take all of your clothes off, and you say, check this out. It's a new kind of a thing.
Do you like Christmas music?
I do, yeah. I haven't for a while, though. I will be perfectly honest.
You took a break from liking it?
Yeah, but as an adult. I used to love it as a kid. I had this thing about wanting to get the Christmas spirit when I was a kid, and I used to dim the lights and turn on the Christmas tree and turn on the music and sit there and wait for it to come, and then, it wouldn't come. And so I kind of got turned off by it, and I think Christmas goes on far too long, says the woman who started pushing her album November 1st.
I'm still impressed by this Christmas seance that you're holding. It sounds like you're like Lenny Kravitz's producer, and you're trying to get the studio ready for Lenny.
Yeah, exactly.
Turn down the lights. Let's burn some incense.
I was trying to get the Christmas spirit.
Put some scarves on the lamps.
Exactly. Yeah.
What did you think Christmas was supposed to be that you weren't getting as a kid?
This magical thing where you're filled with joy. It's what we chase when we have a beer. When I get my coffee in the morning, we're chasing that thing, that place of bliss.
You grew up in the Midwest, right?
I do. Yeah, Chicago.
So it was like a snowy.
Snowy,
Chicago is sort of a Christmas place.
It is. No one does Christmas like Chicago. I've been saying that in all the interviews lately.
It
But
might
it's
just
true.
be. It might just be because I watched Home Alone a lot as a kid that I believe that.
It is.
But
It's a beautiful. The city really does it up, and I'm from the suburbs, and we did it up too.
what did you think Christmas could be? Like, what was the thing that you imagined that you were trying to achieve?
Oh, it's the whole. That's the thing when the Grinch's heart gets bigger, and then almost explodes, or does it explode? I'm trying to remember. And it's what happens to Ebenezer Scrooge. Merry Christmas! It's that thing where your heart just fills with joy, and there's nothing worse than December 26th, when all the lights are still up. It didn't happen. The joy didn't happen. And as an adult, I just didn't even bother putting the stuff up. I was like, oh, this is crazy. So this is kind of my re-entry as a sane adult individual into the beauty of this music and the beauty of what this season, which we should have, 24/7.
We'll finish up with Jane Lynch in just a minute. It's Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Support for NPR and the following message come from BetterHelp, offering online counseling. BetterHelp therapist Hesu Joe knows that lockdown has been hard on us as humans.
we as people are hardwired to connect with others, which is why this whole time is so difficult. The connection that happens between people can be very powerful, and how healing it can be to have a healthy relationship with someone.
To get matched with a counselor within 48 hours and save 10%, go to betterhelp.com/bullseye.
You're in the theater. The lights go down. You're about to get swept up by the characters and all their little details and interpersonal dramas. You look at them and think, that person is so obviously in love with their best friend. Wait, am I in love with my best friend? That character's mom is so overbearing. Why doesn't she stand up to her? Oh, good God, do I need to stand up to my own mother? We never know when we'll see ourselves in a movie, but that search for recognition is exactly what we're going to talk about on the podcast Feeling Seen with me, Jordan Crucchiola. Each episode, we'll bring in a guest to talk about the films that they see themselves in, and also the ways that movies have fallen short. So join me every Thursday for the Feeling Seen podcast here on Maximum Fun, or wherever you find your podcasts.
Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
You're listening to Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. My guest is actor and singer Jane Lynch. You know, you were on the show years and years ago, something like 6 years ago or something like that. And at the time, you had just become both a famous person and a famous gay person. We talked about your coming out, which involved basically people noticing that you had never been in the closet, essentially.
Yeah.
And I've just been curious, like, how do you feel about this 5 years of being a famous gay person with capital letters at the beginning of each word? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I feel like your celebrity, in a way, was part of a real turning point in the way that public culture,
I agree,
addresses homosexuality, LGBTQ issues generally.
Mm-hmm.
You were one of the first people to become a legit famous person who wasn't required to have
the press conference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, Ellen really took one for the team.
Yeah.
She it became a big deal. America loved her, and then found out she was gay, and so she was obliged to. I don't know if she I know she didn't. I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I can't imagine she would have wanted to have that Ellen episode where I'm coming out, the TV show. So I was the beneficiary for sure, because I don't know that I would have had the courage. I had a lot of shame about my sexuality when I was younger, and if I thought that I was going to have to say, yeah, I'm an actress, but I'm gay, that would have scared the hell out of me. So this path was kind of paved. People like Rosie, and they came through with a machete, and I just walked through the jungle unmolested.
Did how much younger are we talking about? Did you have a lot of shame? I guess I'm wondering, if partly the surprise that happened when you became like a public person rather than just a working entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, well, I got to be the person I am because there's not another choice now.
Yeah, that was kind of it. And also I felt safe. I felt safe in my own self about it, and I felt, safe in the world. So I wasn't concerned about hiding anything or standing up and having a press conference that probably nobody would attend.
Let's talk a little bit more about Christmas. Do you have fond Christmas memories, or are all your Christmas memories about failing to achieve the state of Christmas?
There are a lot of them about failing to achieve. Let's see. As I got older, and when I was living as an adult in Chicago, and I would have to go back to, it just wasn't anything. It was a non-event. I'd have to go back to the suburbs to have, and it was. And I certainly didn't decorate my house or anything like that. I still don't. I leave that to my sister, who like creates a Christmas village in her home. So yeah, I don't have that, but I must say I enjoy it, but just for those 4 or 5 days, and then, like I said, December 26th, I'm home and it's over and it's behind me. And I don't want to hear the music, and this is terrible, a person who just released a Christmas album, I don't want to hear it for more than like a week.
Right.
But maybe now it'll be different, that I love this album so much.
What was the composition of your family when you were a kid? Were your folks together?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was your extended family around? Like,
Yeah,
was
oh,
Christmas a time when everybody was there?
Yes, I'll give you some great memories. When I was in high school, I have an older sister, a younger brother, and we were all in high school at the same time. And my parents loved to sing. My dad was a harmonizer, and my mom would do the melody, and we loved Christmas carols. And we used to have, for about 4 years there, we had an open house Christmas Eve party where all of my friends, my sister's friends, and my brother and like 2 friends, he was a bit of a stoner, would come and to the house. And my parents, all of my parents' friends, and Andrea Klimak would play the piano. And we had a piano at our house, and we would sing carols, and we would drink, and it was so much fun. My father's family would come, my mother's family would come, and it would be just a huge open house. Those nights were a blast.
Well, Jane Lynch, thank you so much for
pleasure.
much for taking the time and coming on the show. I just so love your work, and it's such a lovely
you.
album.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
The air is cold, it's 10 below. The driveway's buried under snow. But winter's never cold when you're around.
Jane Lynch, her holiday record, which features Kate Flannery and Tim Davis, is called A Swingin Little Christmas. Here's one more song. This is Winter's Never Cold When You're Around.
But winter's never cold when you're around. No need to bother with my mittens when you're near. 'Cause when I have you close, you're all I need. I'll never freeze. No, I don't mind the chilly air. Comes a blizzard, I won't care. There's a cozy cure that I have found. Winter's never cold when you're around.
That's the end of another episode of Bullseye. Our show is created from the homes of me and the staff of Maximum Fun in and around greater Los Angeles, California, where, not to brag, but my range hood was delivered. Hasn't been installed yet, but it was sitting on a boat in Long Beach for 3 months or something. So thanks, Range Hood. I look forward to you clearing the smoke out of my kitchen. Our show is produced by Speaking Into Microphones. Our senior producer is Kevin Ferguson. Our producer, Jesus Ambrosio. Production fellows at Maximum Fun are Richard Roby and Valerie Moffat. We get help from Casey O'Brien. Our interstitial music is by Dan Wally, also known as DJ W. Our theme song is Huddle Formation, recorded by the group The Go Team. Thanks to them and to their label Memphis Industries for sharing it with us. You can also keep up with our show on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We post our interviews there as well. And I think that's about it. Just remember, all great radio hosts have a signature sign-off.
Bullseye with Jesse Thorn is a production of MaximumFun.org and is distributed by NPR.